Section 1, Developing Pathways to Professions in Engineering. I am Jeff Ray. I'm Dean of the Kimmel School at Western Carolina University. Our three panelists this morning, I'm going to go back through and remind everybody there are note cards on the table. Please write down your questions for the panel. We've got folks in the back that are going to come around and pick them up, and the other two moderators, they're making us work hard for our money today. If you would, write your name and your affiliation on those cards also, and we'll get that done. And one other housekeeping bit of information is lunch will start at 12:15 and not 12. Our panelists today are Dr. Ashok Agrawal, Managing Director for Professional Services and Director of Outreach and Engagement at the American Society for Engineering Education. Frank Hart, Dean Emeritus Frank Hart, who's the Adjunct Accreditation Director for Engineering Technology Programs for ABET and Dean Emeritus from Bluefield State College, School of Engineering, Technology, and Computer Science. And finally, Dr. Glade Montgomery, who is Vice President of the East Region for Project Lead the Way. I have asked each one to speak. We have a set of prepared questions. I've asked each one to take 3 minutes or so and just talk about their backgrounds, their organizations, and just to give us some general information. So with that, Dr. Agrawal.
Thank you, Jeff. First of all, let me extend ASEE welcome to you all. Very much appreciate hosting this meeting in Washington, D.C. Also, there was a time when I used to know everybody who was supposed to be attending ETLI in the audience. However, most of them refused to except that they knew me. But over the period of time, things have changed. But I do want to give you some context of, as Jeff mentioned, what is my background and why I'm on this panel now. My background, especially, I think Greg Pearson really set the stage for my comments focused towards transitioning veterans to engineering-related careers. And much of what I will mention, you will hear some of the same theme or some of the same issues. By the way, you all should have a copy of this trifold at the table that you please get one. You should have also received this electronically as well as a comprehensive report, and I will talk about that in a minute. But first of all, regarding my background, I joined ASEE last January, which is January of 2013, having spent almost 35 years in higher education, both at a 4-year college and then at a 2-year college. And I think in the conversation what we were having earlier about 2-year ET, 4-year ET programs, and what I will mention in terms of transitioning veterans sort of fits very well with my background and what I have to say or what I think I bring to this conversation. For the first 12 years of my academic field, I was at West Virginia Tech in Montgomery. Most of those time I was department chair for engineering technology programs. We had both 2-year and +2 engineering technology programs. Almost all, I shouldn't say all, almost all the programs were that time TAC ABET accredited. In addition to that, our institution also had a 4-year engineering college. So we had this issue of making sure that right information was communicated to students about 4-year engineering technologies versus 4-year engineering, especially the deans and associate deans of engineering will always be hounding at our neck if we ever made a mistake of saying something differently. So I think we need to make sure that we communicated correctly in that regard. I left West Virginia Tech in 1989 and joined St. Louis Community College. And there I was department chair, then dean, then vice president for academic affairs. And the programs that I was primarily engaged with, we had 2-year engineering technology programs, and we had probably for 2-year college at one time one of the strongest engineering technology programs, and we also had a very strong 2-year engineering science transfer program. So again, I'm sort of familiar with all the issues that go along with engineering technologies and engineering, and the kind of courses students take and the kind of advising you have to make sure you provide to students. How do you transition students from engineering technology to engineering, or why you don't, and so on, things of that sort. Since I mentioned St. Louis, I just want to mention one sort of on the lighter note is whenever it's in October and November on the calendar, all of us in St. Louis are always excited, and the team never lets us down. So they are in NLCS again. And as a matter of fact, in 1998, I had the privilege of hosting this institute in St. Louis, and that was the year when Mark McGuire was hitting home runs after home runs, and some of you may remember. So those are always exciting time in St. Louis. I love Washington, D.C., but miss not being in St. Louis at this time of the calendar. Since joining ASEE, I have been engaged in many outreach activities, as Jeff mentioned in my title. One activity that I have been engaged quite heavily is the transitioning veterans to engineering-related careers. And I will talk about more after my other two colleagues have a chance to introduce themselves and give some background about themselves.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, my name is Glade Montgomery, and I work for Project Lead the Way. And I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan, so I'm not sure I'll be able to sit next to Dr. Agrawal here. I have to kind of sit here with my tail between my legs because he's right, the Cardinals are always
That's okay.
there.
My wife is from Cincinnati.
But just wanted to thank Jeff and ASEE for inviting me here. It's an honor to be here and a privilege to be able to share some information about our organization. I've been with Project Lead the Way a little bit over a year now, but before that, I'm from Indiana. I live in Lafayette, Indiana. I'm a Purdue University graduate, and I was in public education for 29 years in the state. I was a high school math teacher for 15 years, then went into administration, was principal of a large urban high school in Lafayette, went on to be a curriculum director, and then most recently a superintendent of schools up in LaPorte, Indiana, which was Northwest Indiana before I joined our organization. But I'm happy to be here and happy to be working with Project Lead the Way. It was in both of the districts where I worked, and I've seen what it can do for kids. But Project Lead the Way is the nation's leading provider of STEM curriculum in kindergarten through 12th grade. We've been around since 1997. We're a nonprofit organization that started in upstate New York. Engineering is our legacy program. That's our oldest standing program, but we do have 5 programs of study for kids. We have an engineering program in high school that's made up of 8 different courses that schools can select from. We also have a biomedical sciences program, and then most recently we have just begun a computer science program. But we also have a middle school program that's called Gateway that's based around 9-week units of instruction in design and modeling, automation and robotics, energy, medical detectives, a lot of different engineering type fields. And we're very excited. This year we have started our launch program, which is our K through 5 program. So we are starting as early as kindergarten, teaching kids the engineering design process, how to think critically, how to problem solve, how to collaborate, and how to ask questions about things in the world and how they work. And so we're very, very excited about that. All of our programming is activity project problem based. It's very hands-on. Kids learn those critical thinking skills and learn to collaborate with their colleagues. So we're very excited to now reach down to the elementary school because research is pretty clear that most people in STEM fields started thinking about being in those fields long before they ever got to middle school. People are thinking about that, kids are thinking about that as early as 2nd grade. So we're very excited to be able to introduce kids to engineering and science and technology at a very early age and let them know that it's okay to be interested in science and math, and it's okay. That's not something that's bad. So we're very excited about that. So I'll talk more about our program, and I thought it was interesting that during the opening remarks that there were some questions about K-12 education. So we really think that we're doing some work that really matters in this country. We are currently in over 6,500 schools all across the United States. We're in all 50 states and D.C., and this year we're going to have almost 8,000 programs that are going to be implemented. So we're very excited. We've been growing rapidly. Just 3 years ago, our organization had 49 employees, and currently we have nearly 160. So we're growing rapidly, but we think that we're providing curriculum and programming that is very much needed at this time in our country. So it's an honor to be here, and look forward to the interactions today.
Thank you. My name's Frank Hart. I'm the Adjunct Accreditation Director for Engineering Technology Programs for ABET, and I'm here to help. I always enjoyed that part of the conversation, and now it really does. ABET is really here to help, and I think some of the things that we offer that are encouraging are, first of all, the outcomes-based education, which really allows you to design your programs to fit a need that is needed in your region and further than that. And the opportunities that's given many of us have really spurred good enrollment growths in programs and heavy industry sponsorship. And the heavy industry sponsorship because we're outcomes based and we're asking them what their needs are and we're bringing them into the process. I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan.
Oh, gee.
A long-time Baltimore Orioles fan.
I remember that.
And
I'm in between the
served on I was on the board of their rookie league club for a long time. So I'm pulling for the O's even tonight. I was with Bluefield State College for several years and ended up as the Dean of Engineering Technology and Computer Science. And the outreach, we had to do outreach, but the outreach to industry and then the excitement that we could cause in the classroom by having really good faculty members made a big difference. And we didn't have to depend so much on the state appropriations that were coming to a college like that. The whole process of continuous improvement with ABET made us reach out, and with that reaching out, it just what the benefits it causes students is really phenomenal, I think. Back to what ABET does, we're in the business of accreditation, also outreach, and right now in a heavy globalization process. So your graduates of the accredited ET programs are listed on our ABET website, which is a global website as well. And you'll see that your programs, if they're accredited by us, are recognized by the Sydney Accord or the Dublin Accord. And we'll talk a little bit later about globalization even for our graduates in a few minutes. But I think the opportunities that occur with the type of accreditation we do with ABET versus the old bean counting days is really exciting. And one thing I'd like to say before we go back to our moderator is try to make your processes simple and effective, because I think too many of us are out there taking too much time away from the classroom and the opportunities we have with students to do some of the assessment and evaluation work that you're expecting. Greg, in your case, I really appreciated the presentation you made this morning. I was a troublemaker with ETC several years ago, about the time Bob Herrick and this group got together. And I'm really excited about the unanticipated benefits that we may get as a result of this. And so I applaud the group with the forum, particularly in moving this process to where it is. This is good for students.
All right, thank you. So let me ask you the first question. What is your organization doing to provide pathways into engineering technology degree paths?
First of all, I mentioned about this transitioning veterans to engineering-related careers. As you know, ASEE as an organization is a member organization of individual faculty and institutions. So our role is not something that we can begin to offer programs or activities or some sort. We simply facilitate the conversation. We have the capacity to bring people together and talk about issues. So let me give you some background on how this transitioning veterans to engineering-related career program came to be in ASE's involvement into this. National Science Foundation for several years has been interested in developing some programs and funding some projects on transitioning veterans to engineering-related careers. And most of the funding, at least until now, had been primarily focused towards four-year traditional engineering program. Last year, ASEE received a grant from NSF to conduct a study and convene a group of colleges and universities to discuss this issue. One thing to keep in mind, and I may mention this again, Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House has been very interested in this issue of transitioning veterans to civilian careers. Both First Lady as well as Dr. Jill Biden have been very engaged, and if you follow the news item, they've been very vocal on these issues. The IT industry, from industry sector, came along and developed a fairly comprehensive pathways for veterans to enter the IT industry. Similar was the case with health industry. However, there was no defined pathways for veterans to transition to engineering-related careers. So National Science Foundation provided funding to ASE to convene that. This first summit, again, you can read the synopsis of these or the big report that came out or will be sending out in a few days, was held in February 25, 2013. And this was about the size of this room with these number of people, primarily from federal agencies, defense agencies, four-year engineering colleges, and some other Veterans Affairs and things like that. To the best of my recollection, I was the sole individual there, as an ASE staff member in that audience who had the community college background and also had the ET background. There might have been one or two that doesn't, ring bell to me. I heard the conversation throughout the day, and the entire conversation was about how, how it is difficult or how it is impossible or how it can be facilitated to transition to engineering careers. And there are institutions who are engaged in that, like San Diego State University, University of Pittsburgh, and so on with their National Science Foundation grant. At the end of the day, having heard all the conversation, I never heard the word possibility of veterans moving to engineering technology careers. And then I made some comments and I made my background, and all of a sudden that at least in some people's mind that really caught their attention, especially in Veterans Affairs and few other agencies, that maybe that's something we've been missing and we need to explore that. So with that, I was sort of not officially charged, but at least asked to put together a concept white paper on what will it look like. And with that, I drafted essentially, and you don't have access to that document anymore, essentially I talked about that what we need for veterans is to, as an ET community, develop one general engineering technology program, which has essentially, those of us who know ABET criteria and all of that, you can create a general engineering technology program without the specificity of various courses and so on. So I said, as a group, as a community, there's a need to develop one program because veterans are a transitioning population, moving from one place to the next to the next. If there's one program, then they can essentially transfer and become portable degree that they can go from one institution. And of course, all the logistics and all the problems associated with that is of course there. So I kind of put that idea on a back burner, that maybe a national program of a sort is really not something possible. But NSF definitely was interested in what possibilities exist for veterans to transition into engineering technology careers. And in the first meeting, it became very clear after getting feedback that this is something the entire group wanted to explore. So we received a second funding to bring in folks again together from 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges to focus more specifically on engineering technology as a pathway. And the document that you see here essentially evolved from there. So at this point, I will mention more about the pathways and all in my comments in the subsequent questions, but I think that's how we are engaged. We are engaged in communicating the message, communicating the need, and trying to put together a consortium of colleges who will be interested in developing something of this sort.
Thank you. Well, I mentioned just a minute ago in the introduction about the different programs of study that we have at Project Lead the Way. And one of the things that we require of all of our schools that bring on a program is that they offer a minimum of, in the high school, they have to offer a minimum of 3 courses. We think it's very important that there is a program of study for kids to go through. And a lot of the specialization courses, particularly in the engineering program, there's 2 foundational courses that are required. But the specialization courses really are designed to fit the needs of a specific school or a specific community, whether they have a manufacturing base, an aerospace interest or digital electronics, those kind of things. So the specialization courses that the schools have the freedom to choose from. All of our courses at the high school level have a capstone course where kids are actually working and designing and trying to solve their own problems that they come up with. But our organization really has three pillars that we center all of our program around, and that's what we feel like is a world-class curriculum. All of the curriculum for our courses is designed by Project Lead the Way with input and help not only from our people in the field that are teaching that, administrators at schools, but we also reach out to people in business and industry, and we reach out to professional educators like yourself to help give us input. We are continually looking to revise and update our curriculum because particularly, I don't know about the college level, but in particular in K-12 schools, if kids don't find the relevancy in what you're doing, they're going to lose interest very quickly. So we always want to try to make sure that what we are teaching in our courses, we try to make sure that it is as up to date as possible and it makes use of the most current technology as well. The second foundational pillar that we have is high quality professional development. All of the teachers that teach our courses have to go through what we call core training. That's done through our university affiliate partners. Steve Wendell from Sinclair Community College is here today. That's one of our university affiliates that we work with. But all of our teachers that teach our courses go to an intensive training session. If it's a high school course, they spend 2 weeks on a university campus where they are receiving intense instruction, not only on the curriculum that is to be delivered, but the pedagogy of how to deliver activity, project, problem-based learning in the classroom. Our gateway courses in the middle school, that's a 1-week training session, and our elementary program is a little less, 2.5 to 3 day session. But they go through that and they're taught by what we call, our terminology is master teachers, and those are people from all across the country that are actually in the field teaching and have been teaching those courses for a minimum of 1 year, and they have to go through a screening process with Project Lead the Way. So last summer alone, we trained over 6,000 teachers all across the country in the methodology that goes into teaching activity, project, problem-based learning. And then the third pillar that we have is an engaged network. And as I mentioned, we work with over 50 university affiliates all across the country that help, again, train our teachers. They provide support through counselor conferences and state-level conferences where we try to help educate people in the school, and in particular, I heard this mentioned earlier, counselors, to help them understand what Project Lead the Way does, the possible careers available, and how they can help their students. Unfortunately, a lot of times in this day and age in schools, counselors have become more of social counselors. They spend more time dealing with kids and social issues that they're experiencing and behavioral issues as opposed to career counseling. So we always try to help them with that. So our university affiliates are great partners with us. Many of them offer dual credit opportunities, preferred enrollment, and we're seeing a lot more universities really recruiting Project Lead the Way students because they have a very solid background and are more prepared to go into STEM fields. But not only university affiliates, but we also work with business and industry partners. Now, as a nonprofit organization, one of the great things that we can say to people that want to help provide funding to schools in their geographic areas is, as a nonprofit, 100% of the funds that they give goes directly to schools. We keep nothing of those funds. And again, I think a lot of people in business and industry now are looking to try to help build a pipeline of qualified workers for the future. They see that in their communities. They see the need for that. So we have a lot of help from business and industry and people that want to help provide support for schools to be able to offer programming like this. So that's a little bit, Jeff, as to what Project Lead the Way is doing.
Well, thank you. Responding to this question, I think that the easiest way is ABET embraces change, and we really want to see change, and we expect change. Whereas a lot of times I think when ABET's coming, you think, well, we need to freeze these last 2 years and not change anything, because when this team comes in, they're looking for exactly this. That's not the case with ABET. We're embracing change. I think the move to outcomes-based criteria and continuous improvement causes more excitement to happen on campus than you would anticipate otherwise. Students are involved in their senior projects and seeing people from industry and participating in the processes that ABET uses for accreditation. We really, and you probably don't see this so much, but we're looking for excitement in the freshman year. And if there's something in there that doesn't happen, we will let you know about that. Sometimes you see the freshmen come in and they don't get the best faculty members. They get the persons that have been assigned to just teach freshman classes. And so we're looking for that once the students have chosen the path they want to participate in, that we keep those doors open and exciting for them and not close the doors. The ABET website is fairly interesting for students, and we have to, we're requiring you to say something about your professional educational objectives, which should tell the student what the program is about, rather than just some objective type words. You should be saying, this is what we're doing, and it's exciting here in this program. And then we also are requiring the institutions now to list the outcomes that the students must achieve. And surprisingly enough, more of the questions come from parents than they do from students, as they're trying to help their children make decisions about what paths they would like to take. And then there's links to back to your program website from ours. And with these processes, we hope that that's encouraging people to look at institutions. Someone might say, I want to study metallurgical engineering technology. They can query that on our site. It takes us back to where those programs are and tells them more about what those opportunities might be. So I think ABET is a much more, it's a very changing environment. We're encouraging change. There's so many opportunities for you to build your curriculum and exciting things for your students now than if we were just saying you have to have these courses to be accredited. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So you've told us what your organization does, so what impact is it having on students choosing a pathway into an engineering technology or an engineering educational career? Go ahead, Glade.
Yeah, I can start out with that, Jeff. What we are finding, we've had 3 major studies done on Project Lead the Way, and these are people that we didn't solicit, but they just wanted to do research on Project Lead the Way students. One was done by Texas State University, the other was done by the University of Virginia, and most recently by IUPUI in Indianapolis. But what they're finding is that not only students that take Project Lead the Way coursework do better and score better on their state proficiency tests in science and mathematics, but they also have a higher entrance rate into colleges and universities studying STEM fields. But most importantly, they're finding if they've had multiple courses and a program of study in high school that they're persisting in those fields. They're staying in those fields. So we feel very good about that. Several universities across the country, as I mentioned, are actively recruiting Project Lead the Way students. Milwaukee School of Engineering, they are nearly half of their students coming in to their School of Engineering have had Project Lead the Way courses. University of South Carolina, their 2013 freshman class, almost 60% of them had taken Project Lead the Way classes before. So, we feel very good about that. And again, we're trying to make sure that kids have the skills necessary to not only be interested in those fields, but to succeed in those fields once they get there. You all are educators at the university level. You see that all the time. Kids come to you as a freshman and they don't have the skills necessary. Not just mathematics and science skills, but the ability to think critically and to collaborate and work in groups. And that's so important. And that's something that's embedded in all of our coursework. So those are the things, Jeff, that we're finding. The students that have taken Project Lead the Way courses are persisting in those fields when they do go into it.
Being on this panel representing ASEE, I don't think that I'm in a position or ASE is in a position to say what impact our program is having on transitioning veterans to engineering careers. Because ASE, as I mentioned earlier, is simply a facilitator trying to convene the group and talk about these opportunities. ASCE itself doesn't offer programs. It is your program that will have impact. What we are trying to do is convene a group of college faculty, college administrators, and talk about what are the possibilities. So for example, in the trifold that you see, a career pathway was designed primarily with input from various colleges that were in the audience. And it is not something that will fit for all institutions. It is not something that will fit for all veterans. But these are the pathways that they can see how some of these things can happen. It is not going to be easy. It is an opportunity that you're providing to veterans. And again, the point of, for example, in Summit 1, it was made very clear by participants that AAS degree in engineering technology is the right pathway to begin to get into engineering careers. Now, it is true that some veterans can go straight into four-year program, but not for all of them. Similarly, it's also true that if you want to develop a pathway, you will need to look at partnership between 2- and 4-year colleges. You need to look at partnership between 2-year engineering technology program and 4-year engineering technology program. When you look at pathways for engineering, especially if they don't come to your institution with right math and right background, they may get 2-year degree, but then you have to develop some bridge program for transitioning them from engineering technologies to 4-year engineering program. So these are all institution-based activities. All we can say that these are the opportunities, these are the possibilities. Now, in the workshop, in the 2 workshops, many impediments were also identified by institutions, and you'll find those, and we can discuss those in a few minutes.
Well, I think the ABET, again, the outcomes-based type accreditation allows Project Lead the Way courses to come right into our curricula very easily. Not only those, but AP credits and other type of educations and competency-based tests are embraced by us now. And we're not looking so much at straight curriculum. You've got to justify that to us when you're selling your program back to ABET. But these opportunities sometimes could cause problems if you're just looking at a curriculum-based type accreditation or a course or a transcript analysis sometimes. But we really embrace those, and also the articulations from the community colleges to the 4-year colleges, and letting them know about what's happening. I really encourage particularly the 4-year colleges to be much more salespersons, send more of a sales force group out to community colleges and other places. There's some students there coming through ET programs that just make outstanding juniors and seniors in your programs at a baccalaureate program. And by us saying you have to have an articulation agreement with every one of those, that's not necessarily the case if it's just a few students from certain colleges, but those opportunities really are just golden for you. And then you've got the chance to do all of your assessment after they get with you. You can take advantage of the assessment they've had before, but you can do the A through K type analysis after the students have got there in their junior year.
Thank you. All right. What's the impact of the global? And Ashok's going to address the returning veterans that are coming back now that we're about to send them back out, I think. Influencing student decisions to go into engineering-related fields.
I think the biggest challenge for returning veterans in terms of transitioning are, and again, these are not necessarily my views or ASE's views. These were the topics that were identified by participants like you from colleges, is first of all awareness. Having awareness of the opportunities that are out there. Veterans don't know, and they need to be informed of what the opportunities are. Then of course, they all come with very diverse background in terms of technical expertise, technical skills, academic preparation, and so on. So how do you prepare a group of veterans or individual veterans to move into these areas? Which means that again in this document you'll see highlighted what the military branches have to do and what the higher education institutions have to do. There's a small list. I won't necessarily read that, and you can review that, is what are the things that needs to happen if you truly want to create a program to transition veterans to engineering careers.
Well, I would say, first of all, the mission at Project Lead the Way, our mission is to prepare students for the global economy. I don't have to tell you that there is what we consider a STEM crisis in this country. By 2018, depending on what study you look at, By 2018, there's supposed to be over 1 million unfilled STEM jobs in this country if we don't change something. So we really feel like the work that we're doing is trying to address that. And one of the things that we emphasize, and I was guilty of this too as a former math teacher. I think back of the way that I used to teach in my math courses. Kids had to be bored out of their mind. I was the sage on the stage. It was terrible. But now we try to make sure that our teachers that are teaching Project Lead the Way courses are more a facilitator. They are the person that is out beside the students and working with the students. If you walk into a Project Lead the Way classroom, it's hard to find the teacher initially because they're all involved, and the teacher is out among the kids. And one of the things, I mentioned this earlier, what we're trying to do is to get kids excited at an earlier age about studying math, science, and engineering, and it's okay to study that. We also want to make sure that we let kids know that it's okay to make mistakes, and you learn from your mistakes, but it's important to be able to go back and analyze why your solution didn't work. That's what engineers do. A lot of I'm not an engineer, but I would take it that a lot of engineers, when they are working on something, the first thing that they try doesn't always work, and that's what we're trying to emphasize to kids. But I think the other thing that we're trying very hard in our schools have a variety of ways that they're working around this, but to get more minorities and particularly females involved in engineering and STEM education and an interest in science and math. Look around this room. This is a very representative group, wouldn't you say, of the issue and the problem that we have. I mean, how many females are in here? That's pretty representative. So, I think it's critical, the work that we're doing, and we just have to teach kids at an early age and try to turn them on. I think kids come to school with a natural curiosity, and oftentimes what we do in schools is turn that off. We teach them how to comply. Get in line, and we're going to go to the restroom, and we're going to walk down the hall, and don't say, and instead we're trying to get things a little messy, and that's uncomfortable. Teachers are uncomfortable with that initially because for so long they've had that kind of rigid control. But I always felt like, as an educator, the most difficult thing that we have to accomplish is to get kids to apply the science and mathematics that they learned in a context separate from where it was learned. And that's part of what we do in Project Lead the Way classes. As a former math teacher, I had kids ask me every week, if not every day, when am I ever going to use this? Well, they don't ever ask that in Project Lead the Way classes because they can see exactly where they're using it.
Well, one thing with veterans, the DD-214 and then the education and training that they've had while they're in the military, if you look at how they transfer those courses or how they suggest acceptance of the transfer of those courses, they feed right into the ET programs. They're just courses in there like the Electronics 1 or the Digital Electronics. That doesn't always mean that they're a perfect fit for what you do, but they're very close, and so we encourage that. Some schools are worried about that there's too much of that happening, but there's cases where when you're doing outcomes-based education and when you're doing competency-based education, we can embrace what those veterans have picked up, and in some fields it's a very good correlation to fit and to make them competitive once they get out of school. They're just opportunities for those people to take advantage of what they've done in the military and carry that forward. Those are available online, and they're available in a lot of other different settings other than just going to a lecture in a classroom. Globalization, mobility, I think we embrace that too. We have to measure that before the students get out, and for example, graduates of associate degree programs from accredited programs, that really gives them just a straight into the baccalaureate programs. It's still up to those institutions to look at that, but it's a great feed. And then if we think about it, U.S. headquartered companies are always seeking foreign nationals to work in different places, both here and abroad, and in that same sense, they're doing that with our students being able to complete globally abroad. They can look at our website, see where the programs are, and make some decisions. So the global awareness and the opportunities and the mobility we furnish these graduates should be something we sell to them when we're bringing them into our programs.
Let me make a couple of comments based on what Glade and Frank mentioned. Glade mentioned the issue of diversity and was mentioned also by Greg in his opening comments. And that has been a big issue also with National Science Foundation and federal agencies. When you talk about diversifying engineering workforce, if you look at the US Armed Forces, it is the most diversified workplace. And the veterans that are coming out of, or veterans or returning military personnel, have tremendous diversity. And at least for colleges and engineering companies, that is a great source of future workforce in a diverse environment. Secondly, about the course transferability and course competencies and so on that Frank mentioned. When I got engaged in this activity last year, and after about talking about for 3 or 4 months, I had completely forgotten in the back of my mind that in 1978, when I joined West Virginia Tech as a faculty member and later on department chair, I used to routinely get veterans from Vietnam War who were coming to our campuses to do and transcript evaluation, do their evaluation of military background and so on, and look at the credits. So it's sort of a situation where all of a sudden dawns on you that this is an issue that you've been dealing with for 35 years, and it is not new. And colleges have been doing it. ACE, American Council of Education, has a complete list of credits that can be transferred for veterans activities.
Okay, thank you. So we're trying to do about an hour panel, and then we're going to go to questions from the audience. So what do you believe are the major impediments in attracting students to engineering-related careers?
I think the impediments I mentioned earlier, first of all, and the very first one is simply information and the knowledge about the opportunities that exist for them. So that means that becomes the job of military services, that becomes the job of colleges to provide them information, establish some system where they know about it. Secondly, it is all about preparation and their interest. Do they have the right background? If not, what system you want to put in place at institutions or at the military services so that they can be prepared to qualify for credit either based on their experience or be able to take courses and so on. And again, as I mentioned, there are a few things that are highlighted on this trifold, what military services should be doing and what the higher education institutions should be doing if you want to remove some of the impediments that are out there. But impediments definitely are in terms of preparation, in terms of interest, in terms of time, their commitment, and all of that is, like typical adult students that those of us who have worked in two-year colleges know that you have to deal with, and you have to serve students along that line.
Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Agrawal. I think awareness is a big part, making kids at a young age aware of what engineering is, what science and technology careers are available to them. And that's one of the things that we try. Again, I want to continue to reemphasize, and I apologize, but that's one of the reasons that we saw the biggest need is to move our programming down and starting with kids as early as kindergarten to introduce them to those topics and get them interested and spark that interest at an early age. But also in our programming, particularly at the high school level, all of our programming contains, as part of the natural curriculum, information about careers and what types of careers are available in engineering. And so that's something that we're trying to do, throughout of our programming, is to make kids aware of what it takes, how much schooling is involved after they get out of high school, and what types of possibilities are available to them.
I see, instead of impediments, things like Project Lead the Way really helps. And we need to do more of that, and students need to be made aware and have the chance to participate in different types of activities with college students while they're still in high school or grade school, anything that, or middle school. Getting involvement at an earlier age is really critical, and I applaud what Project Lead the Way is doing for that.
Okay, thank you. This is an interesting question. We had a conference call, and so I'm interested to hear what their comments are. But what impact, if any, has this past economic recession had on a student's selection of choosing to pursue a STEM education? We hear about it in the news constantly, and Dr. Montgomery just mentioned it. We're short of STEM graduates. So your thoughts?
Go ahead.
Wow.
I'll make some comments.
Well, that's a great question. And, you know, I guess one of the things that we always try to emphasize to students and talk to students about, and that's why we feel like the curriculum and the programming that we offer is so important. I mean, I used to say this all the time when I was a high school principal, and trying to emphasize the importance of education to kids. Now, as a principal, I was emphasizing the importance of education in general, but I always used to use this line. You know, half of the jobs that you people are going to have haven't even been invented yet. By the time you get out of high school, you know, just think about everything in the world of technology and how that has advanced over the years. None of us have a crystal ball. We can't see into the future, but I don't see that diminishing any as we go forward. So that's one of the things that we always try to emphasize to kids within our programming and our curriculum. If you are interested in this, there will be jobs for you. And you just have to believe that. But you have to have a certain set of skills. You have to have certainly a basic educational foundational knowledge in math and science. And one of the things that I failed to mention about our curriculum when I was talking about that, but all of our curriculum is aligned to the Common Core State Standards in English, Language Arts, and Math, but also the Next Generation Science Standards. So, you know, we try to blend and supplement what those kids are learning in their math and science courses. But, you know, the fields of technology and engineering, that's where jobs are going to be. And even if they're, you know, our economy is going to go through cycles. We all know that. We've all seen it. But I think those are the kind of jobs that will persist and sustain, and the opportunities for kids will be there.
I agree. I think also that this recession could be a benefit to the STEM fields, because I think there's enough education out there to know that there's jobs there, and parents are much more involved in their children's lives than they were when I was going through. I'm not even sure my parents knew what I was thinking about doing at the time that I entered college. But today, parents are really involved in what education their kids should have, and this is not all of them, but a bunch, and where they're going to school, and are you going to be receiving an education where you can get a job. And there's a lot of advertisements and that are available out there now that are pushing that. So I would hope that we get some benefits from the recession.
You know, I guess, first of all, let me make a flip comment, which is not supposed to be an official statement of mine or ASE and whatnot. The question could be asked also, what recession? You know, for example, depending upon where you happen to be, what kind of industry you are, what kind of job you have, recession has had some impact on you, or you're still making millions and millions of dollars in stock market and so on. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it. But I think the biggest issue in the context of this conversation is any time a company lays off people because of economic times, it becomes the national news. The second day, the same company may be looking for engineers and technicians and technologists. That does not make the press. So unfortunately, in the media, in the public eye, in the counselors, high school counselors, the negative news about technical and STEM jobs are what makes their attention and what they hear about it. They very rarely hear about, because often, and I think I've seen it firsthand, often companies don't want to promote how many people they'll be hiring because it's a matter of competitive issues. So I think that becomes a challenge for that. So I think that's definitely that needs to be looked at, is what type of industry they are and where the recession is or is not. So I think it varies across the board. You look at IT, industry, one day or 6 months is a recession, and then after 6 months, there's a hiring boom. Or same thing in aerospace industry. So I think this recession has an impact because it immediately puts into individuals' mindset, but job market for STEM is still very, very strong.
Okay. So my last question before we go to the audience questions, how effective are your efforts in helping recruit students?
How effective are my efforts? I would say effectiveness of my effort, or our effort, I would say, not even mine, will be measured by your effort, in the sense, how many colleges, how many two-year colleges, how many four-year colleges really want to step out and make a mission that they want to help veterans transition into engineering-related careers. It is not something, as I mentioned very early on, ASEE or ABAT or National Science Foundation, we are not in a business of offering programs. That's not our mandate, that's not our mission. Our mission is to communicate information and possibilities. It's for you all to make a mission that, yes, as a publicly supported institution or an institution of higher education, this is something you want to make a mission to help your veterans. And I can say one thing for this community, especially engineering technology community, it is not going to be easy, but you have an opportunity to really put your mark in many policymakers' eyes and ears by collectively coming together as a consortium at both with two-year colleges and four-year colleges, making some statement of we as an institution, we as a group of academics want to offer programs that will help veterans transition into careers. Because they are coming back anyway. We need to make sure we are providing some opportunities for them.
I think at Project Lead the Way, we've been very successful over the last several years in expanding programming. 3 years ago, and the time before that, we were averaging around 500 new programs a year brought on by schools across the country. 2 years ago, that increased to over 1,000 programs, and last year we started over 2,100 new programs across the country. So again, we have nearly 8,000 programs in over 6,500 schools across the country. I think schools are understanding the need that maybe we have to start doing something different in education to help prepare kids and provide them with the foundation that's going to help them have opportunities when they get out of high school. You know, the biggest thing I always looked at as a superintendent of schools or a principal, I did not want the kids leaving my schools at an academic disadvantage. I think that's doing an injustice to kids. So I always looked at programs, and as educators, we have to make difficult decisions about programs that we want to offer to kids. You know, again, we had a very broad curriculum in the schools where I worked before joining Project Lead the Way, but we have to make decisions about what's relevant for kids. You know, and again, I don't have anything against family and consumer science courses, but we don't need to teach kids how to sew buttons on anymore. It's bigger than that. All right, we've got to find things that are relevant to kids, that they're interested in, that are going to help them have an advantage when they leave. Whether it's going right into the world of work, whether it's going to a two-year college, trade school, whatever it is, they've got to have skills where they can think critically and collaborate and problem solve. And if they can do that, it doesn't matter what field they go into, they're going to be successful.
We probably don't have a direct way of measuring the effectiveness of the efforts, but we do see a growth in the number of programs asking for accreditation, both in this country and particularly even more on the global market, wanting to have an accreditation by ABAT. We hope that we're impacting that change some by allowing not curriculum so much, but programs to be offered that are exciting for young students and veterans as well.
All right, thank you. We're sorting through questions, so hopefully this is going to run pretty smooth. I've got them laid out over here, so hopefully I won't kill the computer. Several people, very common question for Project Lead the Way, and that, I'll read this one. PLTW has its roots in technology education. It would seem natural for PLTW to encourage students to pursue 2- and 4-year ET degrees. What specifically is PLTW doing in this regard versus promoting engineering degree opportunities?
It's a great question. And I think we try to encourage kids to pursue any type of degrees or career in the STEM fields. You know, we're not necessarily just focused in on engineering. We talk about a lot of different types of careers, not just in the engineering field, but in the technology field as well. So, you know, we try to emphasize that, not just specifically about engineering, but again, as I mentioned, in all of the coursework and the structure of what we do, you know, teaching kids to think critically that can be an advantage in any field that you go into. So we're not just focused on engineering. We try to expose them to a broad range of careers that they can have, not just in engineering, but in technology. I hope that answered the question.
As Ashok mentioned, neither ASEE nor ABET has much direct involvement in identifying/implementing pathways into careers. Is it possible to change that so both organizations are more directly involved in that activity?
Well, I think with ABET, it is, because we're really made up of, is it 33 or 34 professional societies now? 34, okay. And all those professional societies are really trying their best, I think, to get the word out about the education in their particular fields. And we have 2 people in this group, I think, that's on the Academic Advisory Committee for ABET, and they can take these efforts forward to ABET as something that they would like to see ABET become more active in the process. I think, Jeff, are you still on the Academic Council?
I'm still
Maybe
there.
John Williams, I'm not sure who.
John's still on there?
But, yes, I think that there's good possibilities there.
You know, as I mentioned earlier, in case of ASEE, it is an organization of your organization. It's an organization of individual faculty members and institutions. So at the headquarters, especially when you talk about ASE in the context of Washington, D.C. headquarters, it is not the mission, not the role of ASE to offer programs. It's the role of ASE to provide work with institutions to improve programs, to talk about what the opportunities are, to develop partnerships, and so on. So we can be a facilitator for these activities, not something that we begin to offer programs ourselves.
Okay. PLTW is a very, very popular topic with this audience, so
Good.
you might want a
Good.
sip of water.
That's okay. It's great.
Can you discuss a comparison of high school graduation percentages who pursue STEM from PLTW programs and those which do not offer PLTW?
I would have to look those figures up. That's a great question. I don't have those figures off the top of my head, but I do know, compared to their non-PLTW counterparts in the studies that have taken place, the kids that have taken PLTW courses, and I think that the threshold was 2, at least 2 courses in high school, the percentages are clearly higher of those kids that pursue those degrees. I'll have to look up that information. I can get that for you. I don't have it off the top of my head of what those percentages, the differences are, but it's clearly higher for kids that have taken Project Lead the Way courses.
Okay, so a follow-up, go ahead.
Good. Let me make one more comment about going back to the previous question. Can ASEE or ABET offer, I think that was the question, can offer the programs like these? Now, as I mentioned, ASE is an organization of your institutions and you guys, essentially as individual members of faculty. Now, tomorrow or 2 years down the road, what we do at the headquarters, what ASE does, is mostly driven by members. If members all of a sudden decided that they would like ASE collectively, ASE to offer something, I don't know where it will go or how it will be happening, but it is the membership that drives what we do. And if ASE membership, through the board process, through the board, appropriate channels and whatnot, identify that yes, ASEE should be engaged. And let me just give you an example. ASE should be engaged in looking at 2-year engineering science transfer program. Look at the quality or characteristics of 2-year engineering science program. That has to be driven by membership and not ASE at the headquarters.
Well, and I'm going to tag onto that because we're old-time First Robotics buddies. In fact, he stole the championship from Atlanta. So.
It's still going strong.
Yeah, I know. We lost out again last year, so it's going back to St. Louis for another 3 years. But and along with that, and what Ashok just said, I mean, we've got PLTW sitting here, and Ashok, you may speak to this. There was an agreement, an MOU. There was something signed with ASEE in endorsing the First Robotics. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but the same thing might happen with PLTW.
Sure. Few months back, ASE board approved an MOU between ASEE and the FIRST Robotics. And MOU is nothing more than simply recognizing the fact that the mission of the two organizations are synergistics. And therefore, we support what happens at the FIRST, which is promoting engineering and technology and providing students opportunity to be engaged in those activities. Similarly, MOU from FIRST part of view it says that ASE matches the mission of FIRST. Now, in terms of activities, the MOU does not specify what specific activities ASEE or MOU and FIRST will engage in. It is very broad. Down the road, we may find some reasons to participate in some activities. For example, last year at annual meeting, one of the student award recipient was FIRST Robotics Championship Award recipient. So I think there may be opportunities to collaborate. But at this point, it is simply recognizing the fact that both organizations serve the same mission of advancing the cause of engineering.
So I know there's a couple of board of directors members in there, so this may tie into, and I know you probably don't have this number either, but do you have any statistics on the number of PLTW students that graduate and go on to higher education that choose engineering technology versus engineering?
I do not. That's getting pretty specific about different careers. I do not. I apologize.
That's okay. No, I knew that was going to be a tough question.
Yeah. And from what I've heard just this morning, that's a blurry line sometimes. But
Exactly. Okay, this one is for mostly Ashok, but I think maybe Frank may be able to do that. Veterans often present military courses transcripts and expect transfer credits. Often these courses are part of their military training and the analytical work is not included. Any articulation map between these courses and college courses and technology will help. Has this been included in the NSF project? And I think this also ties into how ABET would view that.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically mention, and that responsibilities and obligation or responsibility pretty much lies with institutions. As I mentioned earlier on, when I was a faculty member and department chair in late 70s, early 80s, we essentially looked at the individual's background. And as Frank mentioned, you look at what the military has done in terms of looking at our courses. It is never going to be, well, I shouldn't say never, it's not likely to be a one-on-one match. Then it is for the faculty of the department chair, and so on to decide where the match is and how. ASE itself or NSF itself is not in the business of, telling you how to articulate these courses. These are simply providing the opportunities, and you need to do that for yourself. It's just like any other student who comes to a campus from another institution. If you already have a transfer agreement, you accept those courses as it is. If you don't, you have to review the course content and so on, and then decide for yourself.
Yeah, those are only recommended transfer credits, but they can provide opportunities, particularly after you've had a year of experience or so with those, for offering bridge courses that might help take 2 or 3 of those courses and move that veteran into the next level. Because in a lot of cases, there can be deficiencies that you would encounter when they take the next course. I'd kind of like to ask a question back to
Okay.
The term that Greg used in almost the end of his presentation involved branding, and I just wonder what is the ETC doing about branding ET or applied engineering, and would that make a significant difference in the perception of students coming into those programs? Any?
The current chair is looking at the past chair, and the past chair is looking at the current chair, and then I'm going to look over at the chair-elect. And
Leave it at that.
and I think that's part of what, and I'll speak, and if I'm wrong, they can chime in. I think that's one of the, when the NAE study was commissioned, and I remember sitting at the Keck building with Greg and several of us, and he said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Of course, we were all, yeah, we want to do it. And Greg's statement was, you have to be prepared for the answer, and the answer may not be what you're looking for. I think as we've moved along, I think that's really where we're headed, is that this study is really going to help us have the value proposition and how we can do that branding much better than we've ever done in the past. And that's kind of a personal side note. Dr. Pearson mentioned that the audience for the discussion of the difference between ET and E is not appropriate for the general public. Can that discussion be held in PLTW classrooms or with veterans, and how?
In case of veterans, I think, again, the idea behind this career pathway that, again, was developed by sort of a group of folks who attended these two summits was to show the pathways. It is not a formula that this is exactly how it will happen, but simply so they can see how, if they want to move to a 4-year engineering degree, what are the possibilities? If they want to move into a management field, what are the possibilities? It is simply a roadmap. It is not a prescription, or it is not something driven as a Google direction that you turn left and turn right, and then that's the only way to get there. So I think, you're looking at these are the opportunities, these are the possibilities. And it is individual, very much individual based. It's very much institution based.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we can begin to try to do a better job of, is making sure that kids understand the difference in that. Certainly when we talk about careers and different pathways after they get out of high school, we mentioned that, and it is a part of what we talk about, but we can certainly do a better job of emphasizing the differences.
Yeah, that question gets asked a lot to ABET, actually. And if you're a department head, or if you're just a faculty member at an institution, and a parent walks in, 90% of the time they're going to ask you the difference between engineering and engineering technology. So you have to have a story to tell them. And I don't know how consistent that is, but you can tell them about what your graduates have experienced, and encourage them to ask others about the experiences that they would have had if they'd have chosen engineering. And I think that's not a bad path to take, because that question is asked very, very frequently, particularly if there's a parent involved. The kid may not, the student may not, but the parent would.
Okay. This is for Glade and others. What lessons have you learned regarding effectiveness of Project Lead the Way teachers?
Well, I think some of the lessons that we've learned, and a lot of this is through our core training, and Steve back in the back at St. Clair, he runs core training at his college, and what I think we found a couple things. I think, first of all, when teachers go through our training and find that there's a different way to teach and get kids involved in outcome-based and problem-solving and activity that kids can be working on, it really ignites them. It ignites teachers and sparks their passion. The other thing that we've found, and I heard people mention this earlier, in a lot of states, and it varies by state, according to their Department of Education mandates, who can teach a, quote, engineering course. In some states, it has to be a certified career in tech ed or a tech ed teacher. So those are the people that go to our training. And what we have found, and you know this, and we've talked about it before, there are a lot of teachers that started out as, quote, the old shop teacher, or the wood shop teacher. And a lot of times we've found that they go to our core training kind of kicking and screaming. I don't want to do this. I'm 5 years away from retirement. I don't want to learn this new. I mean, we're just talking frank here. I mean, that happens. We all know that. That happens. I used to say we had people that retired 25 years ago. They just kept coming to work every day. But what we found was those old experienced teachers would go very reluctantly to this training, but it totally transformed their teaching. And now they don't even think about retiring, because they have a new way to ignite kids and ignite a passion in kids and make it relevant and interesting. So I hope that answers the question, but that's what we found, particularly, and that's why we think our core training is so important, because it's brutal. As Steve can attest, People call it boot camp, they call it drinking from the fire hose, those kind of things. I mean, they're learning an entire year-long curriculum in 2 weeks. And they're in class from 8 to 5, they're working on homework until 11 or 12 at night. I mean, it's intense. But when they go back, they're really excited about teaching this way.
And I'll mention that one of the K-12 people that are on the NAE study is a Project Lead the Way teacher. So he's really brought, I think, the committee up to speed on how that is impacting the ET education. This is going to be a personal opinion. You know, anytime you put somebody from ABET on a panel, and I've always said this about Michael, so that's why we didn't ask Michael this year. We thought we'd put the target on Frank, but would, in your view, ABET ever consider accrediting, approving, or endorsing military training records as some entry point certification to ET or E?
Well, we're not particularly in that business. Michael, I may ask you to help me on this.
I have been asked that question before, actually, and I think the proper answer is it's not updated.
Yeah.
It's up to the programs, and if the programs have a system, there's a method, a process for evaluating those courses, and if they fulfill the requirements of whatever that program is, and you can follow that process, and they can document it, I guess. It's like any transfer, in a sense, so. It's a good question, but I don't think it's up for us to answer, really.
No. He helped me on that.
Is that a basic one?
Yeah, I've heard that answer from you before. And this kind of extends that, and it extends to the veterans. And why that's important is because, and Ashok and I have had discussions, because everybody believes that ET is the pathway for veterans and not so much engineering, depending on, they've gone through electronics tech training, that becomes that. And I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit.
No, I think, again, as I said before, when a veteran walks in at your college campuses, it's the department chair or the faculty who are engaged in those programs, those courses, do the evaluation for their credentials. It is not something that is mandated, by somebody. Now, having said that, American Council for Education, they have a very prescribed list of courses that a student can earn college credit for based on experience and so on. So institutions do use that for, transferring credits or awarding credits for that. And as a matter of fact, at the last summit that we had in May of 2014, the two individuals from ASE, American Council for Education, went through elaborate process on explaining how those equivalencies are created. And as a matter of fact, two presenters on behalf of ASEE were, some of you know, Gary Crossman from Old Dominion, and I forget his name, gentleman from Fourier University in California. They made a presentation about what process they go through in terms of evaluating the credit and experience of veterans for college credit.
Okay. Okay, this sounds like it's going to be a big expansion of PLTW with this group, so I'm going to kind of rapid fire questions to you.
Okay.
How is it funded?
As a nonprofit organization, schools, when they bring on a program, they pay what we consider a nominal fee it's called a participation fee that they pay each year for, depending on the type of program they have. And that fee goes to help, as a nonprofit, we provide the curriculum for free, but it also, our curriculum is delivered now through what we call a learning management system. So it gets them access to the learning management system where their end-of-course assessments, all high school courses have an end-of-course assessment that kids take. It also gets them access to what we call a director of school engagement, which is a person that is on the ground in their states that can visit their schools personally, help them with questions. It also gets them access to technical support through our national organization, school support on other types of questions. We have school support people that man our phones and emails from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Friday Eastern time. So because we had to try to think, all right, schools in California or Hawaii, you got to have hours to access them. But as I mentioned earlier, any businesses or organizations, industry that provides funds, those funds all go directly to the schools to help support programming. So that's how we're funded.
Okay, good. Then how are those courses integrated into the K-12 curriculum? And a couple of questions have been similar. Do they get AP credit, non-AP credit?
They don't currently get AP credit. We are working in our new computer science program. Our hope is that by the time the kids complete that program of studying computer science, they'll be able to sit for the AP computer science exam. But there's not AP credit that is offered. First of all, let me back up and answer the first question. How is that integrated? Typically in the high school, again, remember, these are meant to supplement math and science instruction. Our courses are not meant to take the place of math and science. Now, in some states, there is legislation moving forward that the Project Lead the Way courses could be offered as a science or math credit. Those are in the initial stages, but they really are elective type of courses. So when kids come into high school, they'll take their core set of classes, and then they get to select and take elective courses that is in their area of interest. So that's how the courses are oftentimes delivered. That's why it's very important for us to back this up and start offering those types of courses in middle school and elementary to generate the interest. So when the kids, I mean, you get to high school, there's a lot of options for kids, and a lot of coursework that would satisfy a lot of different elective areas. But we want to try to generate that interest. Now, as far as, again, there's not AP credit, but it would be a local high school's decision as to whether they would want to offer what we called honors credit for those courses, where it would help their an honors course gets an extra bump on their GPA, which would help. That's a local decision that schools would have to make, but there's currently not AP credit. Now, the end of course assessments that they take, they do receive a stay 9 score from 1 to 9 on those, and again, that's very similar to an AP score of 1 to 5. That's what typically the grade in the class coupled with their end of course assessment score is what colleges and or universities use to determine whether they would be eligible for dual credit. So.
Okay. And then finally, one last, well, not my final question, but the last question I have for PLTW. And if somebody hadn't asked this, I was going to ask it, because Next Gen Science Standards says, and Greg raised this morning, that every science course will have an engineering component in it, from K all the way to 12. So who usually teaches these courses? You've talked about the training. Is it science and or math? Or do you think maybe a graduate of a possible degree in engineering or engineering technology education would be a better fit?
Are you asking who teaches Project Lead the Way courses? Mm-hmm. We see a variety of people teaching Project Lead the Way courses. It is not uncommon for a former engineer or engineering technology person to come back into schools and teach these courses. It's a perfect fit. But what we say at Project Lead the Way, and again, you have to remember that certain states have certain requirements. So, for example, in Pennsylvania, I know in order to teach an engineering course, you have to have a tech ed license. So you have to hold that as part of your teaching certificate. But at Project Lead the Way, we don't care. We say, send us your best teachers, your most innovative, most exciting teachers that want to turn kids on to learning. That's what we say. So, but I think there's a natural fit with math, science, or former engineers, or tech ed. So, I mean, we even had a health teacher come and go through our training that's teaching a Project Lead the Way course. So,
okay, excellent. And this is for everybody in our last question. The point was made earlier that the general population doesn't understand what engineering technology is. How do your organizations spread that broader knowledge or understanding?
In case of ASEE, again, it is primarily communicated through our membership and institutions. So I'm hoping that you all do a great job of communicating the differences and similarities between engineering and engineering technology. Having said that, ASE as an organization, again, through appropriate engagement of membership, does put out documents and reports, sort of collects data and so on of that sort, et cetera, but not necessarily, we are not actively out there selling or communicating information. We rely on you guys, your institution, your membership, our membership to promote that information.
Well, we have a definition on the ABET website. It's not particularly something that I agree with completely. But at the same time, we have queries where someone will ask a specific question, and my colleague in the Engineering Accreditation Commission and I will get together and formulate a response. And we agree upon it before we send it back out. But a website definition for ABET website definition actually needs improvement. Jeff, if you're looking for another job to do from the Academic Council, they could probably stand some help. But quite often the EAC and the ETAC group will get together and get a response because we're trying to work together for a solution, and we want what's best for that student that's trying to make that decision.
Yeah, and I would say, again, what we try to do, again, is expose kids to a wide range of careers and career opportunities and career paths throughout our coursework. But I think if ASWE or ABET or whatever could come up with a great definition or delineation that we could do. I mean, I heard two people earlier today that had different definitions. So if you could, I mean, we'd be happy to help educate kids on that. But I think if we can get a specific way that you would want us to try to define that, we'd be happy to help with that.
And it's sort of blurry, as Greg's finding out, I think, and as that study is coming up with. So I really encourage, if you get something that's good, branding it if we're trying to be different and if we're trying to offer opportunities that are unique for other individuals. And at this time, I think ET has some advantages that you don't have to enter the program so much with as much math as you would if you were going into an engineering program. This is an advantage for veterans and for some other students who may not get turned on to math and science until later in their life, rather than at an early age.
In our last few minutes, any last remaining comments or words from our panelists?
Yeah, one comment. Again, as I mentioned earlier on and several times during the course of this panel, that the career pathway or the entire scope of transitioning veterans to engineering-related careers is not going to be easy. It's not an easy task. However, many of us who attended the workshop and both in federal government as well as faculty who were engaged in this conversation believe that there's a tremendous opportunity for ET community to take the lead on coming up with some programs, preferably in a coordinated way. If not, many institutions are doing it on their own anyway, some way to develop some program that truly finds a way for veterans and returning military personnel to transition into engineering-related careers, because the opportunities are enormous. It is going to be, these career pathways that you see here is simply a roadmap. Each institution will have to develop its own system for evaluation. Each institution will have to develop its own system for advising, guiding, and so on. But these are such pathways that you'll find in the report. Thank you.
Again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk about Project Lead the Way, and hopefully you'd have an opportunity. There's a tremendous amount of information on our website. It's just pltw.org. You can find out a lot of information. There's information there about the studies that have been done. But we're just happy to be able to try to help prepare students so when they get to you and they're studying engineering or engineering technology, that they're equipped with the skills to be successful, because your graduation rate is monitored as well, and we want kids to be successful once they get there, and we're just happy to be able to try to help prepare kids for that.
Well, again, Jeff, I thank you for asking us to participate, and I can tell you that ABET wants to stay engaged with you, and we're looking for change, and we're looking for input. Feel free to call us at any time and ask us questions that might be bothering you. But we would love to actually see, as much as anything else, don't lose the freshmen. Create some excitement in there and get them engaged and keep those programs active. And I think you've got opportunities in the ET field to really fill a need that's out there. And one of the reasons that 20% of the people just put manager down there is because the ET people have had to take more risk in those first few years, and they're willing to take another risk and say, yeah, I'll do something outside the box. So that's not always a bad qualification, that instead of them being an engineering technologist year 1, 2, 3, that they, later it's manager, and maybe much quicker. But thanks again, Jeff.
Again, to echo the comments of my fellow panel members, I do want to thank ETLI and Jeff, to you, for giving us the opportunity to talk about this program. It's very important for the country, and I hope those of you who are in the audience and who will receive the report at later on will look at that and identify ways to make something happen.
Thank you. I've got a couple of announcements. Well, and maybe Ken does, but first, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. I'm looking at Ken, he's looking at me.
Let me know if we can ever help.
Well, I'll let you come up here and do that one. I got another one. As you notice, we are videotaping this, and Greg's slides will be posted to the website for the conference in a few short days. The other is you will be receiving, probably, I think Stephanie said by Tuesday, a survey for the ETLI this year that they will combine a report for us. And with that, I will turn it back over to Mr. Burbank.
Mine's much more immediate for all of us, and that is that lunch. The timing for lunch has been changed to 12:15 in the room Jefferson 3. Jefferson 3 is just past the elevators to the left. So lunch at 12:15. We will start here again at 1:30. Thank you.